but you understand. I mean, I can't ask you in.
Why not?
Why, George, you know as well as I do, Coon can't see his bride on the wedding day, not where he sees her in church.
That's just a superstition. Morning, Mr. Webb.
Morning, George.
Mr. Webb, you don't believe that superstition, do you?
There's a lot of common sense in superstitions, George.
And don't you go flying in the face of custom, George.
Well, how is Emily?
She hasn't waked up yet. Haven't heard a sound out of her.
Emily's asleep.
Well, it's no wonder. We were up till all hours, sewing and packing and... I'll tell you what I'll do now. Now, George, you sit down here a minute with Mr. Webb and, well, here, drink this cup of coffee. I'll run upstairs to see she don't come down and surprise you. Well, there's some bacon, too. Don't be long about it, though.
Well, George, how are you?
I'm fine. Mr. Webb, what common sense could there be in a superstition like that?
Well, George, on the wedding morning, girl's head's full of, you know, clothes and one thing and another. Don't you think that's probably it?
Yes. I never thought of that.
Girl's apt to be a mite nervous on her wedding day.
Gee, I wish a person could get married without all that marching up and down.
Every man that's ever lived has felt that way, George. It hasn't been any use. It's the women folk who've built up weddings, my boy. For a while now, the women have it all their own. A man looks pretty small at a wedding, George. All those good women standing shoulder to shoulder, making sure the knot's tied in a mighty public way.
Well, you believe in it, don't you, Mr. Webb?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Don't you misunderstand me, George. Marriage is a wonderful thing, a wonderful thing. Don't you forget that, George.
No, sir. Well, how old were you when you got married, Mr. Webb?
Well, see, I'd been to college, and I'd taken a little time to get settled. Well, Mrs. Webb, she wasn't much older than what Emily is. So, age hasn't much to do with it, George, compared with other things.
What were you going to say, Mr. Webb?
Oh, I don't know. Was I going to say something? George, I was remembering the other night the advice my father gave me when I got married. Yes, he said, Charles, he said, start right off showing who's boss. Best thing to do is to give an order about something, even if it don't make sense, just so she'll learn to obey, he said. Then he said, if anything about her irritates you, a conversation or anything, get right up and leave the house. That'll make it clear to her. And oh, yes. He said, never let your wife know about how much money you have. Never.
I couldn't exactly...
So I took the opposite of his advice, and I've been happy ever since. So let that be a lesson to you, never to ask advice of anybody on personal matters. George, are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
What?
Are you raising chickens on your farm?
Well, yes. Now, Uncle Luke's never gone in for chickens much, but I've been figuring on reading
George, a book came into my office on the philo system of raising chickens. I wish you'd read it. I'm thinking of beginning in a small way myself in the backyard. I'm going to put an incubator in the cellar.
Charles Webb, are you talking about that incubator again? Why, I thought the two of you would be talking about, well, things worthwhile.
Well, Myrtle, if you want to give the boys some good advice, I'll go upstairs.
Now, George, Emily has got to come downstairs to eat her breakfast. She sent you her love, but she doesn't want to lay eyes on you. Now, goodbye. Go.
Goodbye.
Go.
Myrtle, guess you didn't know about that older superstition.
Charles, what do you mean?
Since the caveman, no bridegroom should see his father-in-law on the day of the wedding or near it. Now remember that.